Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 11 of Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DeMaria. Thanks for tuning in. On today's episode, I am joined by guitarist, bassist, drummer, composer, author, educator, Joe Morris. And I am super pumped to share this episode with you guys. Joe is someone that I greatly admire. I mentioned it many times in the interview that I really look up to his genuine individuality, I guess. He's a guy that doesn't let anything stop him, it seems. He's always pushing himself to create incredible original music, whether it's harmonically based, harmonics, I should say, which is like Ornette Coleman style of music, or complete free jazz, something like Cecil Taylor, and everything in between. I mean, the guy is just a untapped well of knowledge, experience, and awesome, awesome, unique and individual perception of the music that we all know and love. And I've taken lessons with him, which is really cool. It's helped understand the concepts of something like harmonics. Without Joe, I don't think I could ever have tackled it. Which is something I didn't get in jazz school. So I really appreciated that time with Joe, and we get into it. If there's anything missing, if you want to learn anything more about Joe Morris, the best part is that he is an author, and you could check out his book. And the title of that book is Perpetual Frontier: The Properties of Free Music. I need to give this a new read over, because it's been too long since I read it. But he breaks down free jazz, experimental jazz, avant-garde jazz, whatever you want to call it, into its basically its main schools of thought, which, to be honest with you, I didn't know existed. We know about Ornette Coleman, we know about Anthony Braxton, we know about Cecil Taylor and the like, but at least for me, I didn't know that they had names for their styles of approaching free and experimental music. So Joe breaks that down in his book, and it's really interesting stuff. He really talks about the European version of free jazz as opposed to the American, and just all this great stuff. I can't stress enough that he is just an untapped resource, of information. And Joe's worked with the who's who of experimental musicians, one being my favorite, Taylor Hobynum, and my other favorite, Nate Woolley, both fantastic trumpet players that I hope to get both on the show. But other collaborations include Stephen Haynes, Joe McPhee, Jamie Saft, who else? Mary Halverson, Bob Gorey. Let's see. Well, I'm thinking. I'm trying to not look it up so that I can, just lay these names on you. But no, it would take forever to list all of the musicians that Joe has collaborated with, because it seems like anybody who's anybody in the experimental branch of this music has worked with Joe. And he teaches at NEC, and I think that's great, because how many guys or gals like Joe are in academia? And I think more should be. I think jazz musicians would feel better about themselves if they were forced to play some free stuff. And we talk about my experience. There was an infamous masterclass where my group, my combo, played a Pharoah Sanders tune. I don't want to ruin the story because it's in the interview, but we played a Pharoah Sanders tune, and as you can imagine, in a jazz college music department, we were torn to shreds after that performance. So, I look back on it as one of the more enjoyable ones, and I think it's because I legit just love the music and wish I had enjoyed it more back then because I think I would not feel so dirty, and so filthy to listen to avant-garde jazz and also be a straight-ahead player. Ooh, right? It's weird, man. In my career, I've always thought that I was too outside for the inside guys and too inside for the outside guys. That's always been my vibe. That's always been how I interpret my experience with certain scenes of musicians. And nothing against anybody. We all have our preferred tastes and stuff. But one thing, I talk about Eddie almost on every episode, but it's true. Like, my sense of harmony is completely in line with his, and it could be a little bit more liberal for the bebop, classicists, if we will. So, it's what I love about talking to Joe and interacting with Joe is that you're going to get a completely different perspective of what jazz is, can be, and can become. Just based on his experience with it. And I really appreciate it. I feel like a more well-rounded musician because I've interacted with Joe more. So hope you guys dig the interview. It was a lot of fun. Housekeeping time. Don't forget that Mr. Millennial's Revenge is a product and produced by the New Haven Jazz Underground, which is a grassroots community-based organization dedicated to putting on concerts, clinics, workshops, sock drives, food drives, all the drives, jam sessions in the great city of New Haven, Connecticut. We are crowd-funded. That's right. Normal, everyday Joes and Janes and everyone in our community who contributes to the Jazz Underground directly funds our efforts, and you can help by joining us at patreon.com/NHVJU, where you can sign up for as low as $2 a month. I know economically times are tough. Oh, God, the second biggest recession of my life. Great, thanks. But, I think even in this time, $2 isn't the biggest deal, and it goes so far. We have been able to employ musicians since July because of individual contributions. So please consider being a Patreon subscriber. Once again, at patreon.com/NHVJU, pick one of our tiers. And, man, it's vaccine time. And we're going to be back in action, hopefully within a few months. I'm trying to be, confident and optimistic. So, man, we're going to hit the ground running when we are safe to get our jam session back, man. And don't forget that our jam session was funded completely by individual contributions. So please consider being a subscriber at, one last time, patreon.com/NHVJU. No, seriously. Thank you so much for all contributions. And those of you considering becoming a contributor, we really appreciate it. So, it's 1 week before Christmas, and just a quick reminder that if there are any charities that you've been meaning to donate to or, procrastinating about, please consider donating as much as you can for those in need. As an educator in the city, I kind of have this front row seat to some of the struggles that a lot of people and a lot of families are going through day to day, and a lot of my students' parents are frontline workers, essential workers, and that sort of thing. So, if you were going to donate to, a charity of your choice, but haven't gotten to it, it'd be good to get on that. And if you could donate to a food pantry this season, that would be great. Food insecurity is a major issue, and we need to think about those less fortunate than us in this time. More so than usual, I think, because of everything that's going on. Fucking Congress after 9 months still only going to give us $600, so that does nothing. So if you can donate, contribute, please do. I will. I always try to donate to charity and especially food pantries. I always donate to the Connecticut Food Bank because, I was lucky enough never to go without food as a kid. I'm very lucky for that, but I know those who did, and so I feel like it's a good way to give back, whether it's in monetary donations or donating physical items of food to a food bank. So just think about those this season, and a shout out to any of my friends and colleagues who celebrate Hanukkah. I know Hanukkah's officially over now. It's been the 8 crazy nights that Adam Sandler educated me about when I was in middle school. But, shout out to anyone who celebrated. So I hope you had a good holiday season, and I hope everyone's able to celebrate safely and, and happily this year. I feel like it's much more needed. I'm sure you understand, right? You get it, yeah. So also, for the season, I don't know if you're aware, but for the first time in like 800 years, Jupiter and Saturn are going to be practically touching each other in the night sky. So I love history. God, I love astronomy. I also love history, but sometimes I just can't talk because my brain's doesn't work sometimes. But seriously, right after the sun goes down for the next few days, make sure that you are watching the night sky, preferably to the southwest, I believe. You will see Jupiter, which is a pretty bright star. It's almost like too bright. Sometimes it is, mistaken for Venus or even the North Star, which it's crazy. North Star makes no sense. It must be an outdated thing because of light pollution. But how is that the brightest star in the sky? I don't see it. But anyway, Jupiter is really bright, and Saturn's quasi bright, I would say, and they are practically going to be on top of each other by December 21st, and that's called the Christmas star. I thought that was pretty cool. Next time it will happen is like 2060. So I marked my calendar, but who knows if I'll be around for that. Hopefully I will be. But seriously, around 5:30, 6 o'clock, jump outside, take a look to the southwest, and you will see them. They are getting closer and closer every day. It is super cool. And you know what? In this, era of COVID, it's like the small victories and the small things mean so much more. So that's something that's been like brightening my night, every week, every day since I found out about it. And I wanted to share that information. So today is December 18th, so you got a few more days. I guess it's going to peak on December 21st, which I believe is that the first day of winter? Probably, right? Yeah, I think it is. So, enjoy yourself. Get into the winter solstice, the season of Yule. I'm definitely going to talk about Yule in the next episode when we get closer to Christmas, because I am a I am not a practicing Christian, but the history of how the Christian church stole paganism and pagan holidays and made them their own is fascinating. And on the episode with Larry Davis, I talked about Halloween and stuff, the history of Halloween. I think I want to talk about Yule because Christmas trees are fucking awesome. They are awesome. They are not Christian. They don't celebrate Jesus at all. They're pagan. They're fucking Celtic and shit. So I think it would be super fun to talk about Christmas trees and Yule logs and all the demons that come out at night during Yule. I'm sure there's some scary shit that's involved, right? Because paganism is fucking metal, dude. And I think it would be a lot of fun to, get a little educated. Part of this podcast is to educate my listeners, and how better could I than to expose the real nature behind Christian thievery from other people's holidays. Oh God! If you hear a crack, it's the lightning bolt that it struck me dead. Because I was raised Catholic, and of course that stuff it's deep rooted. Real deep. No matter what, no matter how long you practice something else, it's going to come, Catholicism is going to come and bite you in the butt. So check it out, the Christmas star peaking December 21st. Look to the southwest around a little after sunset. It's really cool. Seriously, check it out. So I've got a real obsession with, searching for live recordings of bands and, musicians that I love. And so I'm always perusing YouTube because surprisingly, YouTube is a great place to find bootlegs. And, nefarious recordings of our heroes. And I try to download them as fast as possible before they usually get taken down. But newest discovery, I found a recording of Max Roach at the Newport Jazz Festival, 1966, and it's nuts, dude. It's only like 4 tracks long, right? And Freddie, the band is Jimmy Merritt, Ronnie Matthews, James Spalding, and Freddie Hubbard. And it's like, what the fuck? How did I never hear this before? I try to be on top of lineups of bands. I had no idea that was Max Roach's band at that time. So I follow Max Roach's band and basically until Booker Little left. Because once he passed away, I just, there's just basically a gap in my listening of Max Roach until like the later albums that have like Stanley Cowell, who I'm going to talk about in a second, and Charles Tolliver, the stuff from the late 60s. And so I had no idea that this was Max Roach's band. I thought it was Freddie Hubbard's band because it is the exact lineup if you switch out Max Roach for Joe Chambers. If you put Joe Chambers in the band, that's the band that's on Breaking Ground, Breaking Away. Oh, son of a bitch. What kind of Freddie Hubbard fanatic am I if I can't even remember the fucking album? But Breaking Point, that's what it's called. So, I thought that was Freddie's band. I had no idea it was Freddie's band quasi, borrowed from Max Roach, which is pretty incredible. Like the mapping of bands in jazz is just so fascinating. And this is a great example of like, I had no idea that this was Max Roach's band. I had no idea that all these guys were in playing with Max Roach, but we're also playing under Freddie's name if Freddie got a gig around that time. I know that Freddie left the Jazz Messengers to, break off on his own and kind of struggled to do so to get, name recognition at that point. Kind of before Red Clay, I guess he struggled a little bit more. And just an incredible performance, this track. I'll try to put it in the show notes. And if you're interested, I'll definitely send it to you. They play Nomo, which is a great 7/4 tune that's more associated with Max Roach in that record. I can't think of it, but it's from the late 60s. And then, of course, Lee Morgan's quintet played it live at the Lighthouse. So really cool tune. I've always enjoyed. They also they play for BP, which is a fucking Freddie burner. So fucking good. And they also play, like, at one point in the show, Sonny Rollins joins Max Roach, like, on stage. I guess it's like a quasi-reunion for them. And they play There Will Never Be Another You, which is super cool to hear. I guess, like, they hadn't worked together in a really long time. And there's one more tune. No, it's just for BP, Nomo, and then There Will Never Be Another You. Fantastic performance. It's when the Newport Festival would go across overseas, I guess. So it's recorded in Stockholm, November 10th, 1966. Super super hip. Really recommend this recording. Let me know if you need a copy of it. I'd be happy to send it your way. It'll probably get taken off of YouTube soon, so don't miss out. So you guys, today is the season finale of The Mandalorian. And I've talked a lot about Star Wars on the show. I do not care at the eye rolls because my show, my rules, right? All I could say, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm seeing posts on Instagram of people basically reacting to it already without spoiling it. So first off, much appreciated. In the age of spoilers, I can't believe it hasn't been ruined for me at this point. But anyway, Kevin Smith, Mallrats Kevin Smith, his post had him in tears. It was a picture of himself crying. What are we talking about? Is Luke in this episode? Because good fucking God, if there is Han Solo, Chewie, or Luke Skywalker in this episode, you're going to hear me. You're going to hear me screaming. I'm just going to say right now, I do not apologize for any fanboying that may happen at this episode. So I'm super pumped for it. My good buddy Ryan Hom told me that it's far out, so I'm already like I'm gonna watch after I've completed the episode, basically. So I'm trying to get through the monologue here so that I can go watch Star Wars: The Mandalorian. But make sure you're watching that. And another recommendation that I want to talk about is there's a series of books called the Alchemy Wars. It's a trilogy, and I've been listening to it on Audible. Audible is one of my favorite things in the world. But the author's name is Ian Tragilis, I think is how you say it. There's 3 books, like I said. The first is The Mechanical, the second is The Rising, and the third is Liberation. The Liberation. It's set in this it's set in the 1920s, but in a world where in the Middle Ages, the Dutch discovered through alchemy how to create life. So they have these robots that are called mechanicals. They're basically steampunk robots. They're called they're basically operating on clock technology instead of circuits or electricity or something. And one of the mechanicals becomes self-aware. And in this world, Holland controls the whole world, and France exists in what is Canada to us because they refused to submit to Dutch rule. They fought, but they lost, so they exiled themselves to Quebec. And the Vatican is in Canada. Super cool, really intense writing. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, you would definitely dig it. So check out The Alchemy Wars. That's my recommendation for the month. Definitely enjoying it. And it's pretty brutal at times, and it's super sci-fi and fantasy and I'm going to talk about nerd stuff on the show. You can't stop me. So that's my recommendation. Check it out. So let's get to the interview with Joe Morris. Like I said, I've known him for a few years. Greatly admire this guy. A true original. And let's get right to the interview. He is a guitarist, a bassist, a drummer, an author, a educator. And I really hope you guys enjoy this interview. I certainly had a blast recording it. And without further ado, my interview with Joe Morris. Joining me now via Zoom in the virtual podcast studio is guitarist, bassist, drummer, teacher, author, composer, showrunner, Mr. Joe Morris. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Thanks for I'm great. Thank you for for joining me on the show. I've wanted to ever since I started the podcast, I knew I'd want you to join me on the show. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I mean, it means a lot to me. These things matter, it's nice to be included.
Oh, of course. You're not too far from me. I'm in East Haven. You're in Guilford, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we could throw balls to each other.
Yeah.
Probably. Our arms are good. Yeah.
When COVID is over, we'll be able to take more advantage of the short distance between us. But
I can't wait.
Yeah, I know. Part of the reason why I started the show was because I wanted to check in with people. It's like an excuse to talk to people I respect and admire, but also to check in on colleagues or friends I haven't talked to. So some of the shows have almost had this reunion vibe to them because it's been 9-10 months at this point.
Yeah.
And that includes you. I think the last time I saw you was one of the Sunday shows at the State House.
Yeah.
What was that? Did that series have a name? I can't remember because I know you named some of your
Multiplex.
shows. Multiplex. Yes.
Multiplex. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so weird, man. That wasn't too in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't too long ago, but it feels so long ago that I'm forgetting this stuff. I knew the show was called Multiplex, but it feels like it was 5 years ago at this point. It's terrible.
Well,
but,
I feel like I didn't really understand, even though I've been doing this for years and years, I didn't really understand how much of my life and my thinking goes into preparing to go and play with somebody in some situation. Like it's how I think.
Hmm.
And I think it was about June, after a couple of months of really not seeing anybody, I did a couple of online things, and I couldn't figure out exactly what was going on in my head. But then it dawned on me, like, I haven't gone to a gig. I haven't gone to hear
Yeah.
anybody. I haven't had to, battle traffic to get to New York to play a gig, and then,
Yeah.
battle it on the way home. And as much as some of that can be a hassle, that's what I spent my life trying to do. So
Yeah.
it's really been, and inconvenience and disappointment is not the same as, people getting sick. It's meaningless, but it does make you consider what you do as maybe being a little bit more special than you normally do. I know a lot of people have said that like we miss it. It,
Yeah.
it does matter, even though it's maybe doesn't always matter to everybody else.
It's crazy. I think like 2 months into quarantine, I had posted on Facebook. I was like, you know what? I will never take playing a tune for granted
I saw
again.
that.
Yeah, and
I remember when
I
you
was like,
said that.
I was
Yeah.
like, Autumn Leaves. Anytime you want, like, what tune can I not, do I roll my eyes at this point? And it was like Autumn Leaves, whenever you want, no matter who's in the band. And that was like May when I wrote that.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to miss when I taught privately and I would play, Claire de Lune out of the elementary school trumpet book,
Yeah.
because most of my students were, middle and elementary age. And I remember I was teaching that age group for like 15 years privately, right?
Mhm.
And by the time I called it quits, it was just like, I can't do this. It's the same songs over and over and over again. The only thing that changes is the face of the child, because the material has not changed since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I would kill to sit to sit in a lesson room with my teeth kind of hurting from playing Claire de Lune with a beginner for the umpteenth time of the day. I mean,
Well,
that's how the point we're getting at.
yeah,
It's awful.
that's the real problem with trying to do everything this way, is that the rhythm of interaction is gone. Like,
Yeah.
there's no rhythm. This is a little bit like talking on the phone, but nobody plays music on the phone,
Right.
like,
Right.
and I had ensembles at New England Conservatory last spring that met online for a few weeks for the last 6 weeks. And, we did things, and I tried to get people to play, and they were game. It worked out pretty well. Not everybody was into it, but
Yeah.
we tried, and some of it was very good. But the thing is, there's that point in interpersonal relations, when you're like, your voices connect, and it just doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
There's no rhythm. There's no real full connection. So it's very hard to do the kind of thing we do in this environment. I can't wait for it to be over.
Oh, I hear you, and it does feel like it's like playing over the phone. That's a great
Yeah,
example. Nobody
yeah,
nobody has said that on the show, at least, but
yeah.
that nails it. And it's funny you bring up NEC
Mhm.
and New England Conservatory, and that you've been teaching there for quite some time. Turns out a good friend of mine is in one of your ensembles, Aidan O'Connell.
Oh
Bass
yeah, oh yeah, it's
I've known,
terrific.
yeah, I've known Aiden for years. He's a fantastic guy,
Great
fantastic
guy,
player.
great bass player. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
He had invited me to, I guess you guys had a concert, you had a combo concert or something.
Yes.
He
Mhm.
was so excited. He was telling me about the tunes. They sounded great. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, Joe Morris. I was like, tell him I said hi.
Oh, okay. He didn't mention you, but
Oh, too
he's
bad.
been busy. He's been
Yeah.
busy. I can see. Yeah, I can understand why you guys would be connected, because he went to Hart, so he was down
Right.
here, and he played a lot of gigs with a lot of people. And
Yep.
yeah, he's a special musician and person, and he's that my. It's interesting. My ensembles at the conservatory have been smaller, and everybody's so excited to play that I probably had the two best ensembles I've ever had, the easiest to work with, the most successful in finding a group sound, and they're always very good. But these two, maybe because they're smaller or the situation, I don't know. These two were extraordinary, and yeah, Aiden's in one of them, and he's terrific. He was in my ensemble last year as well. But yeah, he's a good guy and a really great bass player, and he's working a lot on more free things, and he's really
Yeah.
good at that too. I mean, he's got such a great technique and foundation, and he's got such a great attitude and spirit, and he's like a real guy. He's a real
Yeah.
player.
He
He's
is real.
a real genuine I need to play kind of person.
Yes. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
always loved that about him because genuine is the word I would use to describe him. And I was so glad that like two people I respect, two people I admire, two people I've played with, like we're hooked up, like that. It's because COVID has been like the era of small victories. And that was like my November small victory. It was like, oh my God, these two great musicians are working together in a teacher student format. That really like
Yeah.
hit home for me, because it's like, the bar is so low in terms of like possibilities, I guess, that any kind of connection or performance or composition or something creative is so much more uplifting. And I'm not surprised to hear that, these ensembles have been so great, because I feel
Yeah.
like nobody's taking this for granted. As we were saying before, nobody's taking it for granted. So it's probably way more special. I couldn't imagine being, in my senior year of college or grad school during all of this. I'm teaching remotely elementary kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to pre-record all of my lessons for the most part, because I cannot physically and mentally like play the piano and sing, a tisket a tasket to a bunch of blank screens. So it's way easier to record it, put in sound effects, and I've been playing like Wurlitzer the whole time because of all the patches.
What an amazing like learning curve. So many people have had to, figure out how to do things like that. I can't say that I have. I kind of have been resisting it. I've been conducting private lessons, some of them online, some out of my private studio, my new school students, and some of the NEC students, a couple of them. But I really don't like it, and I don't have any interest in developing a sort of technological way of doing it. I'm just gonna ride it out. I can't do it. It's there's too many subtle things that I feel like I have to do, but mainly I just don't have the head that like for what you just described, to plan all that and put it all together technologically and make it work. I just, I'm too old. I'm too dumb. I just can't. I can't do it. So,
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of people find these really beautiful, they reinvent themselves and the way they teach by just doing this and making it work. And so that's another kind of thing. I think at this point, I know where I teach, people have understood now that there's a viability. It's viable to teach this way. And I think it's going to stay like this, for people who can't be there, or for students who can't be there, things like that. There's gonna be a remote aspect that's gonna stick around, at least on the college level.
Yeah, well, there's already grumbling that it's eradicated snow days moving forward. So
that's right.
Poor kids. Yeah, they can't have a snow day now because we can have school remotely. So I hear you. I feel like most people are like, the second we don't have to teach this way, we're done with it. Yeah. And it's only going to be used as like a necessity for the circumstance, whereas like offices and certain businesses are going to be using it. My wife, for instance, she just found out she is indefinitely working from home from now on. So we, luckily we both have offices in our house, and it's like she might never return to that building again, but still work for that company. Weird. It's so weird.
Well, it's time to move to another country where we can do everything remotely. Let's go to where it's warm, or where it's they have better health care, or where we don't have QAnon or whatever else.
Yeah.
Let's go. I don't know. There seems like every place these days has some version of that. But yeah, I think if I could do this, I'm already looking for some other idealized locale to like finish my life in. And I'm probably not going to do it, but I fantasize about it. I even search for it online.
Wow.
I'm like that. It's time. Like, I just think, why not? Why not?
Doesn't hurt to consider, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know where you might end up, but, so a lot of people have been writing new music during this time. Do you feel inspired to write new compositions, or are you to like, pass the time, or do you feel creative? Or are you just like, man, this is temporary. I don't. My muse is not here. I'm just gonna ride it out. Like, what's it been like for you?
I have absolutely not been inspired to write music.
Mm.
A couple of years ago, I was working on this like new approach to writing music and to improvising that I call instantiation. I released 4 records of instantiation music. And then I did an online concert through the Ottawa Jazz Festival in June. And I did an instantiation piece. I wrote, Peter Kankura, who runs that festival, asked me if I could write a kind of piece that could be done remotely with people. So I used Sam Blazer and Craig Peterson, and I'm forgetting the name of the Tanya, I forget her last name, was a pianist in Ottawa. And I wrote a score and we performed it live for the festival. So I was, working on that, thinking that after releasing these 4 records that I would be really heavily involved, engaged in this really exciting new direction for myself. But right now, I'm just waiting for this to end. I've been writing a lot of text, a lot of I write an article for a German jazz magazine called Jazz Podium, which has been around for a long time. So I've been doing that every month with the intention of using that in a new book that I'm going to write. Part of it is already written, and I've written a few grant proposals, that one of which is still pending and was a big one, and a couple of big articles that were published this year about me, things that I had to do, again, like by typing them out and answering them in emails and things like that. Or one I just wrote a long article that was posted, is from a European source. And so I spent probably more time writing and than I have been playing. And I'm kind of frustrated by it because I feel like my guitar in particular is like an alien object.
Yeah.
I pick the thing up and I think, what is this thing again? What do I do with this? And I don't mind feeling that way because I prefer to feel that way, instead of thinking that I actually know what it is, because it gives me the chance to come up with something else. But it hasn't really been the case. But I have been playing the drums quite a bit, which is fun. And that keeps me interested in, I don't have to think the same way. And, I had the audacity to play in public a couple times last year, and I recorded a couple of things last year and this year. But that's kind of like I'd say that's that's been keeping me kind of normal as a musician, to play the drums.
I feel like playing the drums is probably pretty cathartic.
It's cathartic. I mean, everybody should do it.
Yeah. I bought a drum set for my father-in-law because he used to be a drummer, and he's hoping to pick it back up when he retires in a couple of years. And so I've got this drum set in the basement, and I look at it all the time, and I'm like, maybe I should spend this time and just bang on the drums.
You should. You should. You should. What's the worst thing that could happen? Your neighbors complain.
Right,
but
right.
Where I live, my neighbors don't even hear me, so I don't have to worry about that. And I have a space. You've been in it, the space over my garage, and I haven't been out there for a while because the heater wasn't working until yesterday. It's been one of those years where like nearly everything in my house is broken. Just like one day, like the roof is leaking in part of it. I had to cover it with a tarp. Just a lot of like, oh my God, I'm home so much. I'm seeing everything that's wrong with the place.
Sure.
That's been so a good way to get my mind off of that has been to go out and improvise on the drums, which is something I enjoy doing. I even bought myself a better drum set. I have students who play drums, and I have people come over to record, so I want to have a better drum set. But I actually found a good drum set and set it up, and I'm like changing the heads, and I'm getting into it. And it's interesting because like being a guitar player is kind of brutal. Being a bass player is easier for the kind of music I want to do. Being a drummer, it seems like I should have played drums my whole life, not because I'm good. It never has anything to do with whether I'm good. It's because it makes sense to me. There's just something about it when I do it. I think, okay, cool, that's fine. And the guitar, I could do the greatest thing I ever wanted to do, which is out of my mind anyway. And then the next day think, Oh God, it's terrible. I mean, it's such a hard thing
Yeah.
to make work, but the drums, it's fun. So who knows? Maybe if maybe I'll just play drums for the rest of my life. That will really drive everybody. They'll drive everybody away from me.
Well, no, I definitely caught one of the performances where you were on drums
And you
at the
weren't
State House.
grossly offended. You
No,
weren't. You weren't
I was
horrified.
like, man, this guy, and I'm gonna get into it in a second. I was like, this guy plays guitar, bass, and now drums,
Yeah.
and I know I can relate because playing the trumpet
Yeah.
is a every day is different. And whenever in most of my friends and colleagues, my close friends and colleagues are rhythm section players. And whenever we're playing a hard tune or we just played a gig or something, and I'm just like, yeah, try using your face.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if I hear the guitarists and bassists talking shop, I'll just like interrupt the conversation
Yeah.
and be like, at least you can use your hands.
Yeah, and maybe like your lips didn't dry up. Even if your lips dried up in the cold yesterday, you can still play the guitar.
Right, exactly. Yeah. In another world, in another life, I would pick bass. I think
Yeah. No, if everybody played bass, the musicians would be a lot happier.
For sure.
You can, and also like the authority that you wield as a bass player in the kind of music we do is potent, and
sure.
And people don't really notice. They need the bass player, but they don't notice that the bass player is really completely shoving everybody around at will. And that's a wonderful thing when you've been playing up in front of the bass player for years, when you're finally like back there and you go, wait, if I just do this, the whole thing changes.
Sure.
It's really a powerful thing. So it gives you a lot. It's almost like being the conductor of the band, but nobody knows it.
I was just going to say, what a power trip. It must be from this beef in the front of the band, and all of a sudden find yourself in the back of the band and realize you have to
learn. You have to learn how to listen back there, and you have to learn how to listen in that register. I mean, I had to learn. I'm still learning a lot of stuff. I had to learn how to get around the thing. I knew where the notes were, which doesn't mean I already hit it. I always hit them in tune, but I knew where they were because it's tuned like the guitar. But the physical nature of it is pretty heavy. Yeah. And that's also kind of a nice part of it, but you kind of don't know until you're back there that it's how much control you have. It's really like I always tell students, including like Aiden, I go like, you're like the boss, and you're really like on the rudder of a sailboat. Like,
sure,
you move it just a little bit. You're not the boat, you're not the sail, you're not the crew, you're not the water, you're not the wind, but if you move it just a little bit, all those things are affected. And that's one of the things that I guess I picked up on, which is what made me decide to do it. But mainly what made me decide to do it is just the complete audacity of doing this at all in the first place. Doing sure. Any part of it.
Sure.
It's just like, I just need to do stuff. So I just do what I feel like doing,
Yeah, and that's a good segue. Like, are you originally from Connecticut? How'd you end up in Guilford? Okay, so
I was born in I was born in Hamden, which is like a hotbed of guitar players. Lauren Mazzacane Connors is from Hamden. I believe that Ed Cherry's from Hamden originally.
Or New Haven.
He's from New Haven. He's definitely from New Haven. And Michael Gregory Jackson, who goes by Michael Gregory now, who played with Oliver Lake and a lot of people, especially in the 70s, and he was on Arista Records. He's still around. He's from Hamden. And then we moved to West Haven, which is where my parents both grew up in 1960. And so I grew up in West Haven until 1970, and then we moved to New Haven. And so, I lived in New Haven until 1975, and then I moved to Boston. And then I moved to New York, and then I moved back to Boston, and then I moved down here about 19 years ago. So
what brought you to Boston the first time? Were you going to school up there?
No, I had friends who went to school, but I wanted to get out of New Haven for a few reasons. One is that everybody left, and the other thing is I got mugged. I got mugged one night, and that really freaked me out. And it was hard to be. It was hard to be kind of like a working stiff bohemian, weird artist in New Haven. I think it's easier now, but it was hard then. And so I was either going to move to New York. I was going to move to New York, but then I went to New York a few times, and it was pretty clear to me that I would be devoured I didn't have it ready to go there and try to figure that out. And I've been up to Boston a few times, and I decided I would move up there. And so that
Mm.
was a good thing because it was almost like, it was like there was a good scene. Uh, some of it was very naive compared to what was going on in New Haven, and of course, much different than what was going on in New York. But there were a lot of musicians, and if you looked hard, you could find people that you could relate to. And
Mm.
so pretty quickly, I was playing with people and started doing what I wanted to do. And by '76, I was doing solo concerts and stuff. So
Wow.
it didn't take long, and it wasn't because I was, I mean, I thought I had stuff together to play, but I needed an environment that would enable me, allow me to kind of grow. And
Sure.
so that was good. On the other hand, I wish I never went up there because there's things about it that are really detrimental to pursuing a creative life. There's just a certain kind of, you know, really bad negativity up there that I didn't really understand until I moved back down here. And it's not like that here, and it's not like that in New York.
Yeah.
And I was one of the people that I knew who I was one of the few people in the scenes that I was in Boston that actually went to New York to play and went to New York to meet people. And
Mm.
so I think my growing up in New Haven gave me a totally different perspective than nearly everybody I knew in Boston, most of whom went there to go to school, and a few
Yeah.
were born there, but most of them went to go to school. So they had a very school-oriented idea about what jazz was or what music was. And it was very judgmental and very, very provincial in relationship to New York and everywhere else. Like, we're better than New York is always like a big thing up there. And it's not to knock individual people, but there's a kind of a very provincial attitude about art up there. And,
Yeah.
if you said, well, I'm trying to be an artist, you get yelled at for being pretentious. And really what you're trying to do is just do something that's creative, that expresses yourself.
Sure.
You shouldn't have to explain that.
Yeah.
But, I kind of still have to explain that up there,
Uh-huh.
even though I've been teaching up there now for 20 years. I still am an outsider. I'm still not really correct, which is something I'm proud of, but also, come on, I mean,
Yeah. No, I
come
mean,
on,
Joe, I mean, this is not meant to kiss your butt. This is a sincere thing I want to bring up is like what I've always admired about you is I've always gotten this individualism vibe from you. I've always, every time we've ever talked or interacted, I'm always like, this is a guy who won't let the academics or the I call them the jazz boys, jazz Nazis or, that sort of thing.
yeah,
Like I won't, like you never seem to let them bother you. And I feel kind of like kindred in that aspect. I feel like I've always straddled the middle of the Venn diagram between
yeah,
the bebop
yeah,
rooted forms of the music and the more experimental forms, and I can't tell you how many times I've told musicians who I've talked to who I could sense are a little burnt out from
hmm
like transcribing the same kind of stuff, and I would say to them, you gotta look up Joe Morris because he's doing his own thing, and from what I can tell, he seems to be very happy to do it. So there's something to be said about the mindset about what you consider music, and what I've always noticed from you is you've always been encouraging and always been like, if it makes you happy, then
yeah,
that's all you need. And man, that there's not enough of that because and I agree. I lived in Boston for a little bit too. I would never plant my roots there.
yeah,
I felt it was creatively very stifling, and I didn't want to.
yeah.
Also, I didn't want to go to New York because I didn't want to get swallowed up as well.
Yeah, it's tough in both places.
Yeah,
Maybe we share some of that because we're from here. I
Mm.
actually don't, look, I mean, when I was in high school, I would go to concerts at Yale. I saw Rashid Ali. I saw Dizzy Gillespie. I saw Andrew Cyrille at what was
Wow.
Blue Bart's, which is now the Cafe 9. And the places were packed with incredibly enthusiastic audiences that gave
Sure.
people a standing ovation. Um, I play sometimes in Boston, and I feel like people are looking at me, to find out what's wrong with me. And
Yeah.
I've done a ton of stuff up there, but it never seems to go away. And I think there's a certain kind of love of music here that people have that is as good as the quality of beats we have. People like music, and it's a small city, so there, you can, most people with a few a few exceptions that shall remain nameless, are very encouraging. But I would also say that that stuff bothers the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you think I'm carefree and it doesn't bother me. It eats away at me and bothers me as much as it does anybody else.
Oh, sure.
The difference is I think about your connection to Eddie Henderson, right?
Sure.
Your teacher. How do you define a guy like that? You said you straddle a line. I sort of always think I fall someplace in between a bunch of different areas. I think everybody who's important, and I don't mean to say I'm important, but everybody I admire as being important is somebody who's found their own space. They found their own route, their own lane, and some of those lanes are very extreme. Some of them are very, easy for everybody to like. But the ones who think that they're supposed to get in one of these lanes and stay there because that's the right lane to be in, I don't think that I don't think they have any. I should say that the quotient of individualism that comes out of their music is going to be lower. That's all there is to it. So I'm lucky that I either am incapable of thinking the other way, or I can honestly say that I've always been inspired by people who are unique. When I think about guitar players, I know there's a lot of people who are very good, but I'd rather hear somebody who's original. I don't know what good is if it isn't original. And if, for years I still get it, but I used to get it badly that I should play like this person, that person, this person. I'd get told, you don't play like him, you don't play like him, you don't play like him, you don't do that. And I gradually started thinking, wait a minute, they're telling me I'm myself, which is all I ever wanted to be. They're insulting me. They're trying to cut me up, but really what they're doing is confirming what I'm trying to present to everybody, which is I'm just trying to be myself. I'm sorry it bothers you. But also in the course of those events, there were times when I met some of the people I was being compared to, and they were like, hey man, you sound good. So the real people, they were the same as me, even though they sounded different. And so that's one of the reasons. But I say one other thing about that. Most of those people were unbelievably encouraging. I never heard any of them go, and by the way, man, get lost. And you're a loser, and you're never. And so it's one of the reasons that I appreciate that you feel like I'm positive and I'm encouraging people. It's important to me as that's part of the gig. The first time I met Andrew Cyrille, I begged these promoters in Worcester, Massachusetts to let me open solo for Jimmy Lyons and Andrew Cyrille.
Wow.
And Andrew said yes, and they gave me a little time. And I went in and introduced myself and thanked him for letting me play. And he said, well, we have to let people play, and so that's how I figure, like, if he can do that. That same night, Jimmy Lyons, who is one of my heroes in life, said nice things and gave me a hug after my set.
Right.
And I feel like I want to be one of those people, to anybody, to everybody. And, especially, and I'm not always like that. Don't get me wrong, but
well, we're all human.
I would prefer to be positive about it. Especially in terms of just like inviting people to play and opening up. I think the issue of organizing things and keeping your community involved in this is one of the important things about doing this. And I can tell you, I learned that in New Haven. In New Haven in the 70s when Wadada first got here, and Jerry Hemingway was here and Anthony Davis was here and people were here. There was a scene. And it was, not everybody stuck around, but there was a sense that this was a place like Chicago, like New York, like St. Louis, like Amsterdam, like Wuppertal, like wherever else there was music, Philadelphia at the time. And so it put it on the map. So I figure wherever I am, I should do what I can to put it on the map with some music.
I think you've done that.
Thanks.
You know, I've caught a few of your shows. I was happy to catch maybe like one or two at up in Hartford at Real Artways, but
Hmm.
I loved when you were doing the thing at the State House. I was trying to get there as often as possible. I have a brunch gig on Sundays, and I would basically you know, my gig would be over. I'd go get lunch or kill time, and then I'd go over and catch what was going on at the State House. And I love just sitting in the back and seeing like just the community, like you said, and just watch the music and know that there was always something that would open my mind. And yeah, in parallel to that, with what the Jazz Underground is doing, it
Yeah.
just felt like it kind of validated what I'm doing on my end. You know, my series are, tend to be more straight ahead focused,
Hmm.
but I like to think that I'm encouraging, individual musicians to let their individual sides come out, and definitely like taking cues from the multiplex and arcade and the Real Artways shows. It's important to let people, play their music. The jam session that I ran on Tuesdays, I made
Hmm.
sure the house band played an hour up front. And
Yeah.
I would always encourage, I'd always say the most important hour to be there is the first one. Catch whatever they're playing, whatever, non-standards they call, whatever originals they call. That's what we should be checking out. And I'm trying to basically build the same thing. Trying to keep people around
Yeah.
and not to forget, like, yeah, I like being in New Haven because I like that I had a residency in New York. Like, it was possible to
Yeah.
play there. It was
Yeah. You can
possible.
go there and go
Yeah,
home. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
there, and it's definitely kept me creative being near my roots and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well,
With, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that, a big part of that is the other people who've been here. The multiplex thing was 50-50 me and Bob Gorey,
Sure.
and the improvisation series at Real Art Waves was 50-50 me and Stephen Haynes.
Yeah.
Stephen Haynes did a lot of the interaction with the venue, and I invited people to come up, and we all played together. And he
Yeah.
invited some people to come up too, but he did most of the dirty work of just like of uh, dealing with the schedule, and he did all the promotion, and
Mhm.
and so. Uh, I kind of brought people in, but we built up an audience by Stephen being the relentless Facebook guy that he is, and
Yeah.
being very good at it. And Bob Gorey has a radio show and has the New Haven Improvisers, I forget the collective,
Collective. Yeah.
which has been going on longer than I've been here for the last 19 years. And I know some of those people from now. I've met him through Bob, and I did a semester filling in for David Shevin at Southern years ago, and when I first got here, no, in 2005, and I met some of the people there, and that's real New Haven. That's just like people who want to play.
Yeah.
It's a real community thing, and they've done serious things that have been mentioned places, and they keep doing it, and I know in some places uh, these kinds of things can become like hierarchical, like this one's more important than that.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing about New Haven is that that hasn't happened here. And the first thing I did here when I first moved here was I had a series that first ran, and this is through oh man, I can't think, the guy from Jazz Haven, Doug Morrill. Doug Morrill
Yeah.
helped me,
Yeah.
another guy who held things down for a long time, for really long time. He helped me get into the public library, like common space, and we ran a series. I had Joe McPhee and Ken Vandermark and a bunch of other
Wow.
people come in. And
Wow.
then I ran a thing at the public library in Brantford, where I had Kwake Kweche Obang and some people from Boston, Jim Hobbs and Roy Campbell Jr. played on that. And
Wow.
so I did those, and then Nick Lloyd called me and asked me to curate the first series. I didn't even know him. Taylor Hobynum knew him a little bit from when they
Yeah.
were kids.
Right.
And
Right.
he invited me down to look at the firehouse, which was amazing because in the 70s, I worked at a hamburger joint on the corner of Orange and Chapel Street, and the guys who were in there most of the time lived on Crown Street, and some of them slept in that place. It was like a
Wow.
homeless place.
Oh,
It was like
wow.
an abandoned place. So to see that turn into this like cathedral
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
music was like amazing. And then out of the blue, Nick asked me to curate the first series. And so once that started, I was like, okay, so this thing's pretty much established. And so you'd think that someone like Nick, who's done so much for New Haven, would be, control it. Not at all. Not at
Yeah.
all. I mean, it's just like not at all. No, no pushy, bossy, I'm in charge, this is my town kind of crazy stuff. Everything here is different in that regard. That
Yeah.
like, I think it's just if we can get anything done, it's kind of a miracle. And if we can um, share it, it's a super miracle. And
Yeah.
so far it's gone really well for that. Now there's always young people, like I think of Michael LaRocca, who's a drummer who runs a thing in Willimantic. He's from
Yeah.
Trumbull.
Right.
Fantastic. You mentioned Aiden uh, before, but I have another bass student in at NEC in the contemporary improvisation department, Caleb Duval, who's from Manchester, who's a terrific musician. And there's a lot of people around here, so there's a lot of different takes on it.
Yeah.
And it's a good place it's a good place to live. So let's play some music here.
Oh, absolutely. And it's great. It's there's definitely a lot of connections to be made. Actually, I booked Michael for the show. We're gonna have a
Oh,
interview.
great.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks. Because Michael and I have we've only interacted once. We played together once or twice because he came to my jam session. But I saying it's the same thing. Like I recognize what he's doing. I really admire what he's doing. I think he's a great musician. I want to interact with him more. Because my goal is to interact with more experimental, avant-garde, free-playing jazz music, jazz with a lowercase j musicians, because my life is mostly consumed by straight-ahead playing, and which I love and everything. But man, I've got too much love for the other side of the tracks, so to speak. And I'm always trying to hook up with these other musicians and interact with them and collaborate with them and that sort of thing. So,
Well, you're a rare bird in that regard. And fortunately, there's always been a few people like you who don't see the differences as a fault. And
no,
sometimes in the area I'm in, it's the opposite of that, where people see people who are straight ahead as some kind of fault. It's just different ways of expressing yourself, and it's different. One of them isn't better or worse. I think sometimes we all have to defend ourselves to other people, depending upon who's around, or somehow
yeah,
or other have to defend it. But it shouldn't happen. It's
no,
part of it. Shouldn't happen. Again, it's based again on weird competition, not on
yeah,
on not on reality. So musicians usually are pretty cool with each other. And I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that Michael's like he has a degree in jazz drumming
yeah.
from New School. So I mean, he's just trying to be himself the way he plays drums, but he certainly knows a lot about jazz.
Yeah, yeah. No,
about every version of jazz.
I've always enjoyed any time I've interacted with them. I'm looking forward to our interview, and I know what you're saying. Sometimes I have found myself in more experimental settings and felt vibes for being like too straight ahead for the out guys and too out for the straight ahead guys, and it's like it can be very frustrating to find yourself in the middle, in your own lane,
Yeah,
because both camps, because you've got people rooted in what they think the music should sound like in both spectrums, which is
yeah,
so frustrating.
yeah. Um, it's you mentioned the book I wrote, which is called Perpetual Frontier: The Properties of Free Music.
Yes.
It's all about in very simple language. I think it's not a simple premise that I work off of, but I try to make it very clear language. It describes free improvisation as based on four what I call seminal methodologies. In other words, there's four real main ways that people play what is called free improvisation, and there's offshoots of those four that happen as well. And some people would disagree with that, but I will arm wrestle those people to prove I'm right. Um, you know, and 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 it's not different than, say, bebop, which is a harmonic structure methodology for improvising.
Sure.
And so if someone says, "Oh, well, bebop isn't free," yeah, harmonics isn't free either, and unit structures isn't free. They're
Yeah.
structured. The difference is they become they become more restrictive when someone gets very orthodox about what they are and how everybody's supposed to do things. But all of them were dependent upon some super creative people trying to invent a way to express themselves,
Yeah.
all out of almost nearly all out of the exact same predicament that they were thrown in, which was that they couldn't engage with nearly any other thing. The African American artists, they couldn't be taken seriously for anything. So they
Right.
invented something that would demand that they be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And so I think those are all the same. The other one, the European free improvisation one that's what I call it. Those are mostly English guys who were incredibly inspired by the African American models and just wanted to have their own. They didn't want to lift theirs. They just did their own. I asked Evan Parker about a year and a half ago, when did you realize that you were doing something different? And he said, I don't know if I ever did. I always thought it was connected. I said, yeah, it's connected, but it's also different. So, I think everybody comes from the same place. The more there are differences, the more interesting it is. If those differences weren't ranked all the time, it might be a healthier kind of situation. I don't know.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because listening to you, I'm thinking about a trumpet player I'm friends with. He'll bring up, oh, I'm sure you've checked out this person, and I'll respond with, yeah, but man, have you checked out Nate Woolley? Have you checked out Taylor Hobynum? Check those guys out. I'm always trying to throw those curveballs to make those connections. That it's not that far off to find similarities between Don Cherry and Donald Byrd.
No, not at all.
It's not as separated as you would think. And I have your book. I actually grabbed it off my bookshelf before. I read it when I got out of college. And decided and kind of planted my flag in New Haven. That's when I met Bob. It's funny. One of the first jazz scene I got into was through Bob's organization, and I had read your book shortly thereafter. And it always, every time I look at your book, it reminds me of a particular moment when I was in school. I was in a combo that was going to play "The Creator Has a Master Plan" by Pharoah Sanders.
Yeah,
it was like the first time I was going to play a tune that didn't have 2-5-1s in it, and I was so excited. I was the guy that was like, yeah, but let's talk about Bitches Brew, while everyone's talking about Kind of Blue, I wanted to go in that direction.
Both of which are magnificent things created by the same guy.
Yes,
the same guy.
Right, I know.
How do you like one and not like the other? It's the same guy. Right?
I know.
Yeah.
And I was so excited for this performance. It was the only time I was excited for a master class. We were going to play The Creator Has a Master Plan. We rehearsed it a few times. It was like a jazz quintet. And I remember at the end of it having to go through like a 45 minute just destruction from all the other professors, from all the students, and I remember being so depressed afterwards. And I was like, I was so excited to play this tune. I was so excited to I felt like I was finally expressing myself and for it to not be accepted. And I'm like, what? And I wish that if not your book, a book like yours, but preferably yours, was like standard reading when you're like a sophomore in college in jazz school, because it's, there's two things. So I work with a lot of younger musicians because I try to stay busy and I need rhythm sections. So I'm always like tapping Hart and Westcon and Purchase for, rhythm section players.
Yeah.
And two things that I find will instantly turn me off to a player is, one is the closed-mindedness to freer music.
Yeah.
That drives me nuts because, they want to talk about, the jazz messengers, which I love.
Yeah, which is pretty free music. It's
right,
pretty free. Yeah.
but then look down their nose when you mention Ornette at the Golden Circle or something like that. And then the other thing is uh, 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 the lack of knowledge of live recordings, because too many musicians are brought up through especially through jazz school. I feel like they're only listening to the studio takes, so they think every song sounds perfect.
Exactly.
And they never listen to the live stuff where shit falls apart.
And people have to improvise.
Right, and you listen to the band improvise, you listen to the band react and adapt, and I think those two things are so much more important than some other things that I could spend a whole show talking about. But yeah, having the open mind to things that are not traditional, and understanding that not everything sounds like a polished, perfect product.
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta work with it.
Sometimes in teaching ensembles, coaching ensembles at NEC, students, I'm having them play Ornette. I'm teaching them about harmonics and unit structures and Cecil Taylor's music and Braxton's music. And they go, can we listen to the record? And I said, we can listen to the record, but you have to understand, this is one example of this piece. Yeah. This is not a produced record. This is not a Beatles record where everything was essentially recorded to be on that recording. They might have done 1,000 takes of every second of that music. These are one performance. And in a case of an Ornette record, he might have said, yeah, this is the worst take we did, but the producer said, yeah, this is one we're using, especially back then. And but he might have said also, I'm sure he said, okay, we did it that way once. Sorry, my thing is ringing. He might have done it that way once, but and then said, okay, we're never doing it like that again, because he didn't have to, because he already solved that problem. And I think, so, going back to what you said about that sort of resistance to this stuff and having a book that's required reading. And I'm going to really go out on a limb here, but I really believe this. I'm really putting myself out to be, heavily hated for this, but it's going to take a while. It might take the next generation to do that, because most of the people who teach don't have a clue about what you just discussed. So it's not possible for them to. And by the way, my book is used in some college courses around the world.
That makes me feel good.
It isn't possible for young people to be encouraged to check out things if why is that doing that? If their teachers are discouraging them. I mean, they might do it on their own, and plenty of them do, but I can tell you where I teach, which is a high level place with really good smart people. No one in 20 years on the faculty there, and I can say this in public, has ever asked me what I do.
Huh.
No one.
Yeah.
I've handed the book to a couple of people who complimented it, and some didn't. No one has ever said, how do you teach harmonics? I'd love to know. One person asked me this year for some scores, some of the Braxton scores that I got from Braxton through Taylor. And I said, yeah, no, because I don't want to have people play these things and not understand at least as much as I do about Braxton's motivations. And so go ahead and learn how to do it, and let's see. And then, let's talk about it. But, I hold down the truth and take the truth from the artist who created it, or as I always tell the kids, I say, I take them at their word. And I can't seem to turn that off, so that's why you're hearing that.
That's okay.
And I try to preserve it as a truthful thing, and it's effective. So the students I work with have at least a functional understanding of what's actually going on in these areas of music. But otherwise, people who teach it go, well, someone said about Evan Parker one time, he said, this is a very important person where I teach. He said, well, I don't really think of that as music. I think of it more like sound art. I said, what?
Hmm.
Really? Like, how is it not music? But then I just thought, why waste I'm not gonna inform him. If he
Right.
said to
Right.
me, tell me how this works, I could have told him how it works and he would have understood it. Um, I actually have come to believe that what's wrong with all these places is that they're basically, and this is going to be a very controversial thing, but I believe it in my
I'll
heart
bring
and
it on the
soul,
show.
is that, these places believe that by pushing harmony, they can control things because harmony is a Western thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, African Americans used harmony in super sophisticated ways. Charlie Parker, Monk, Coltrane,
Yeah.
Miles Davis, Wayne Shorter, Duke Ellington, everybody that I named and lots of other people use harmony. Barry Harris, everybody
Yeah.
uses harmony in really sophisticated ways. These are brilliant people who love harmony and use harmony, but they still didn't use harmony the way the classical people used harmony. They
Sure.
messed around with harmony, and so uh, these institutions have to have some way of deciding what's right and what isn't right. And
Yeah.
if you said, for me to go, well, my stuff isn't based on harmony, they're basically going, well, how can we control you?
Yeah.
How can we possibly control this thing if you're not using a thing that we think we know better than everybody? We can,
Yeah.
So in a way, what it is like perpetuating this idea that European classical music is music, and everything else is less than that. And
Yeah.
that's how it goes. And so when jazz education and jazz culture becomes part of that, it just perpetuates that same thing. And again, these are not bad people. They're not mean. They're not some vicious racist people. Maybe some of them are, but they don't quite get that their obligation is to understand the people who make the art and the motivations that cause them to make it the way they make it. Not one set of them, all of them. Not one set, to
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
it as a
Yes.
progression. Now, I can say that because I learned to think like that by paying close attention to, brilliant minds like Anthony Braxton and Wadada Leo Smith, who are our neighbors here, by the way, who also, live here and
Yeah.
give it a certain kind of quality, dignity. We had Tyshawn living here, Taylor Hobynum, they both
Yeah.
moved. We miss them. But, I think I learned to think that way in some ways from being around here as well. And, part of that is in New Haven, where anything other than that is not cool. Like you don't do that. It's not as, even when I was a kid, Yale was more open than it has been for a really long time. There was a kind of interest in changing things. So I think when people who are running departments and teaching jazz start to learn different things and start to see it as a bigger thing, then they'll teach their students, and their students will see it as a bigger thing. Fortunately, a lot of them already do, whether they are taught that way or not. And a few people actually try to teach it, but not enough. And a lot of them who do try to teach it don't pay too much attention to the particular artists who created these operational methodologies that are very specific. They don't do that. So, I guess the one advantage of that is those of us who are really involved in it are still underground. We're still outsiders. I think of myself as an outlaw in every place I am, not because I'm trying to be, but because just thinking the way I think and doing what I do, it just makes people think I am. So I try to just accept it and enjoy it.
Yeah, and you bring up so much there, and it's like we especially jazz academia like forgets that the leading figures were the Mavericks, were the Outlaws. I always make this joke. I used to preface it by saying this is tongue in cheek, but the older I get, the more I'm actually very sincere when I say Wayne Shorter would have been destroyed if he was in jazz school today.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
people would have hated him. They would have hated his
Yeah.
playing, and they would have told him his composition sucked. And I really mean that because what a leading figure, what an individual, what a creative person, and we celebrate him now. But we're it's almost like you're expected to celebrate him because he's been established as a great composer and a great musician,
Which he
and
is.
right, and of
Yeah.
course, but the focus is not on his creativity and his artistry. The focus
Right.
is on the product. He has
Exactly.
compositions like you can play his more obscure pieces and people will always go, oh cool, Wayne Shorter, right?
Yeah.
It's because he also has standards. I think
Yeah.
he has standard tunes that are played all the time,
Yeah.
and so those tunes are commodities. Footprints is a commodity, but if you were to play Footprints how Wayne Shorter played Footprints, you would be like, what, you'd be told what to do. And it brings me back to that moment where we played The Creator Has a Master Plan.
Yeah.
And I had to hear about how I was playing the trumpet terribly the whole time, and it was
Yeah.
terrible.
Well, I mean, I think it's based on one thing. All of it is based on one thing, and that is racism.
Mhm.
And that's the only way we can understand this. We're talking about something that was invented by black people who were prevented from engaging in whatever the hierarchical culture that the thing that was art.
Yeah.
They were prevented from, in most cases, walking in the building. They
Yeah.
certainly weren't and still aren't included in the upper echelons where decisions are made about what art is. They still aren't, which is outrageous and horrifying. They still aren't. They still have to fight for a place. And then if someone awards them, a grant or gives them a position, then they're accused of only getting it based on affirmative action or something,
Yeah.
when in fact, our music in this country is not European music. It's American music. It's made up of the diaspora, the collection of different people that are here. And it's
Sure.
the most, and the synthesis of all those things. I was in Italy last year, and a guy at the part of the crew at the festival I played at, he said, in America, I go and I have Italian food. It doesn't taste like Italian food. I said, it's not Italian food. It's Italian American food. It was brought, originally it was Italian food until they couldn't get the right cheese and they couldn't get the same tomatoes. And they lost the recipe that grandma handed down because grandma died. And it's been transformed by its own experience. We're not playing classical music, but the music here is not worse than that. It's part of world music. That isn't music. Music is all over the world. That's just one version of it. And artistically, it's spectacular.
Yeah.
As like a system, it's an imperialistic nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a component. It represents that. And so that kind of thing, the sort of what is correct music thing is still there, especially in academia. And I feel it all the time because I can tell you, even though I've been teaching successfully for 20 years, and the fact that I have the job I have is a miracle. And I think, people respect me and they know that I do something well. I don't think people are interested in it. I don't think the faculty I would say I'm more than tolerated. They know they know that I bring something to the students that the students can't get anywhere else. But they're not interested in it. They're not interested in it. When in doubt, things go back to the same stuff, which is, mostly Wayne Shorter, really. Yeah. And all respect, I mean, I have profound respect for Wayne Shorter. I don't know where I would have been in my life if I didn't come in contact with Wayne Shorter's music. But enough's enough. Like a lot has happened. And the first person who would tell you to do your own music is Wayne Shorter.
Absolutely.
He said it. He said it a million times. The next person is Herbie Hancock. And the person who said it around them before they would have said it is Miles Davis. Yeah. And he said it over and over and over again, including on the bandstand for the great quintet when he had Wayne and Herbie and Tony and Ron Carter. improvised on stage. They had a tune or a framework for the tune, and he demanded that they challenge themselves and come up with new things all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like I remember in college, like it was always like, oh, you're not worthy enough to tackle the second grade quintet yet. Like it was just shut down. There's just no way, because it involved
that's amazing
group improvisation and breaking the rules and all the things. I agree with you 100%. I love bebop, but bebop is the form of jazz with the most rules, because like you said, it's harmonically very strict,
very strict methodology.
I'm not saying I dislike it, and I'm not discounting it. I'm not at all, but I'm saying that's why the focus is there, and that's why you will never see a student group play, Pinocchio from Nefertiti and allow the opportunity to like totally deconstruct the composition and make it their own without some sort of ramification afterwards, some sort of punishment. And it drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I don't do that, but I would have my students do that. I think where there's a gap, this is a critical thing to think about, is that the issue is, how would they deconstruct it? What kind of process would they put it through? So what happens when people consider that kind of stuff, when they say, okay, here's the chords, here's the structure of Pinocchio or Nefertiti, here they are. And then they go, okay, let's do another version of it. They have no understanding of how you might put that together, as if the opposite of that is nothing. That's where the mistake is. That's where, where I reside, is in saying, okay, here's how people have done that. Here's how people have created things that are not nothing. They're another methodology. I'm really sorry. This thing.
No, it's okay. My dog's barking in the corner.
I can't turn off the messenger thing.
It's okay.
Even though I'm trying to. I don't know why.
Go ahead.
It's not happening. And so, that's the way it goes, is that people who might be the ones to encourage that thing to happen, to say, okay, let's take it off the harmony.
Yeah.
Don't know specifically what the people who managed to do that actually did. And they don't know. They go, okay, just do whatever you want. Well, that's basically a methodology. That's a methodology. But the ones that we're talking about are much more specific. Or there's some, like I've been reading this book, Time Will Tell, which is interviews with Paul Bley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good book. I mean, he's an interesting guy. He's very stubborn, and he kind of does well, I don't want to know anything about what I'm doing, which I take as like a plan. That's a plan, it's so annoying.
That's okay. Can you hear my dog? My dog's barking at something. My neighbors probably came home.
not quite as intrusive as this ringing bell on messages that I've canceled out like 30 times. Whoops! Now I ended up getting that. Oh, sorry. So that's one of the problems, and I mentioned that in my book, is that one of the reasons that people don't discuss what is considered free jazz or free improvisation is because they don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
There was, before I started doing it, some other people started doing it, where I taught. There was a guy who screamed and yelled at people. He was like, he wasn't paid. He was just like working off of a visa so he could stay. They gave him an hour every week to run a free jazz ensemble. He didn't know how to explain anything to anybody. He screamed and yelled. He smashed a piano lid one time. He would say, you have to play like you mean it. He'd do all these hysterical things. I never do that. I go, okay, here's how you express the pulse here. Here's how to use the melody. Here's how we transpose everything through the clefs. Here's what we do. Here's the articulation. Here, I'm super specific about it. So, if you say, okay, we're going to take Nefertiti and we're going to do something else with it. Okay, well, what are you going to do? There has to be some kind of methodology there. If the methodology is to change the chords, well, all you're doing is reharmonizing it. You're not doing anything different to it. If you're changing the way you express the pulse and not using the chords, then you're using it as a melodic structure. If you're using it as a melodic structure, well, then there's 60 some odd years of history of people using melody as a structure without using harmony as a structure. If people knew about that, like I do, they could teach people to do something else with it. So, that's the problem. People don't understand the other part of the music, whether they like it or not, or they're intrigued by it. And I can tell you, they don't know anything about it. So if they are intrigued by it, they haven't done any of the work that I've done and a lot of other people have done to actually understand it. And I it's a mystery to them. I mentioned to somebody about people auditioning, and I said, I'd love to hear some people play some Ornette. And he said, well, it'd be great if they played When Will the Blues Leave? And I said, yeah, but what about one of these other things? And he said, yeah, they can play that. I said, yeah, but they can't. He said, but they wouldn't know how to improvise on it. I said, yeah, they wouldn't know how to improvise on it, because where are they going to learn how to improvise on it unless they do it on their own, or they read my book, or listen to Ornette and figure it out.
It's a maddening cycle at that point. It's a chicken egg situation.
It's not getting better, except for the fact that a lot of the young people that I know who are like you, who are teaching, elementary school and middle school. Like, for instance, there's a guy named Brad Barrett, who's a spectacular virtuoso bass player who runs a creative music program at the Conservatory Charter School in Boston, which is a music school for it's a middle school, but their main focus is music, and it's all like, it's an inner city school, and the kids were playing classical music, and he decided that he was going to have them do their own music and use improvisation to do it. And he's changed their whole curriculum as the creative director so that they're composing and improvising and looking at these different ways of doing it. And those kids are going to go to conservatories soon. And they're going to show up with stronger ideas about what they want, where they can construct the music rather than just interpret it, rather than just doing it right. They're going to have the tools to build music the way Ornette did or Charlie Parker did. Sure. Or, they're going to have the tools. So the future of that in 10 years, maybe 5 years, is going to change. And some of those kids are going to go to school and go, who are you people teaching me this stuff? Like, why are you stopping me from learning these things? And I think that's what's going to happen. I think the next generation of kids are going to be affected by this generation of younger teachers who have a much more open mind.
I'd love to share that optimism with you, and I hope, especially for your sake, I hope it is in less time, and that you could see it and see it come to fruition and experience it, because Joe, we need more musicians like you, not only running series and shows, but infiltrating the academic scene. You are like Viva la Resistance. Seriously, man. Like,
thanks.
Real quick before we go, I just want to say I just want you to know my favorite records of yours. Ready? Mm-hmm. Mess Hall. The Joe Morris Bass Quartet.
Oh yeah,
High Definition.
That's
my most listened to album of yours, and slash Taylor's. I love Taylor's playing on it. And speaking of Taylor, the other Tet. You're only playing guitar on one of them. You're playing bass on two of them. I absolutely love those records. They inspire me all the time. I was listening to them today to get pumped for the show, and and write my questions down for you and everything. So I just want you to know, in your very vast discography, that's what I'm most thankful for.
Well, that's good. I have to say that every one of them means something. I've done everything I could through, I think, about 180 records, most of which are my production. There's a lot of records with other people, people hiring me to be on their records, but
sure.
I don't know exactly the number. It's probably around 100 or more. And a lot of them are collective things that I organized or we organized, and where there's a lot of improvisation and some compositional stuff. But I take them all as being the same. I don't think that one area of what I do is more important than others. But I will say that so I've done everything I could to never repeat myself. And I'm still, so far, I think I haven't repeated myself, which has been a goal of mine. I don't want to have 30 records that sound the same, or even 30 records where I'm playing the same way.
Yeah.
So, the idea is to have a kind of continuous beginning all the time, be in an area that's a mystery, that's, configured with very specific ideas and organized with a really good group of musicians who I can interact with well, and try to do something different. But some people don't know that, I had the first record released led by a guitar player on the Black Saint Soul Note record label, which was a legendary label in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a working trio and a working quartet for a long time, which is one of the reasons why I got a teaching job. It's a big reason. I really did try to engage with a kind of new way of making jazz as a guitar player, and that goes back to 1983, and with my first recording. And
what's the name of that record called?
That record is called Symbolic Gesture. There's another one called You Be Me, which is a quartet, which is, I think, the first record like that Matt Maneri was ever on. And
okay. Well, the reason why I ask is I was born in 1983, so I also
those are from 1993 and 95.
Oh, okay.
The first record I made in 1983 in honor of your birth is called Wraparound. Wraparound, which is on my label, Reedy Records. Back then, that was one of the only ways you could make a record, was to press it yourself as an LP. And that's the first one I ever made, and I still think it's as good as any of the other. I'm super proud of it. There isn't one that I cringe on. There isn't, because I never had to deal with anything other than what was like a surprise. I mean, I kind of approach it like, how do I keep this thing interesting? And so far, it's been okay. So I like I'm really proud of the high definition record, the bass quartet, which came out of Werner Eulinger, the owner of Hat Hut Records, sent me a picture of a bass scroll, and he said, "What do you think of this picture?" And I said, "It's nice." He said, "I'm going to use it for a bass record." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I don't know, it's just like whatever."
Makes sense, right?
I said, "Okay, nice. Okay." He goes, "Yeah, your record. I need you to make a record for me with playing bass." And so I wrote some tunes and got Taylor and Luther Gray and Alan Chase, who's like one of the greatest saxophone players of my generation that a lot of people don't know about. And we did that at Firehouse 12 when I had a broken finger.
Wow. Incredible.
So, it's a great record. I'm really happy about that record. So I'm glad you like it. And Mess Hall is a local, that's a part of, that's not, I'm thinking of Shock Axis. Mess Hall took me years to finish because it's part of what I called my Big Loud Electric Guitar trilogy. I did the first one in 1989, 90, the second one in 1993, but it wasn't released for like 5 years. And the third one, Mess Hall, took me a really long time to make happen because it was very hard to do. And that came out about 10 years ago, I think. So,
wow. Yeah. It's getting up there in the age, I think.
Yeah, it's getting up there, like me. Yeah.
Well, Joe, it has been an absolute pleasure. I feel like if I let the clock run, we can keep this going all day. But thank you so much. Seriously, personally, thank you for all of the encouraging words you've ever given me about playing music and being myself.
You sound great, man. I mean, who wouldn't say that to you?
Oh, thanks.
You're a good guy. You play great, and you organize great gigs. You have a great vibe, and you organize. You're doing stuff in the community. Shame on anybody who isn't encouraging you.
Oh, thanks. I'm gonna listen to that audio clip every time I hear someone talk shit.
Please, if we don't encourage each other, we're in rough shape.
I agree.
And
Joe,
thank you for what you said.
Happy holidays to you and your family.
Same to you.
And I hope to see you in 2021 at the next series. And hopefully we could share the stage together again. So
yeah, that'd be great. We have to play a set next time.
Sounds good, man.
All right.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Joe, thank you for being on the show. I feel like slowly but surely I am getting more street cred for the podcast, and before you know it, man, I'm gonna have someone like Herbie on the show, right? Thanks, Joe. Joe, Brian, Charette, all the heavyweights that I've gone on in the last couple of weeks. I mean, I appreciate it because the show can only grow, right? It can only go in one direction from here when you're in the bottom of the barrel. So seriously, thank you to Joe for joining me on the podcast. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, guys, episode 11 in the bag, and I'm gonna keep turning out content during the holiday season. I will be off from school, so I'll have more time during the day. So I'm hoping to get a lot of interviews, down and out there on the internet, man. So check out that Max Roach concert, 1966. It was just on YouTube. Some guy uploaded it, so it's yours to enjoy. Let me know if you want a copy of it. If anyone's playing gigs, good luck. if I may, my brunch gig at Alta Florian is still happening, and I'd be happy to see you. And check out the New Haven Jazz Underground Buskers. They will be downtown Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 4 p.m. It is a free performance. They'll be freezing their butts off, so go help them out, okay? In the meantime, I'm Nick DeMaria. This has been Mr. Millennial's Revenge, produced by the New Haven Jazz Underground. I'll see you next time. Take care.